Welcome everyone, wherever you came from and came back from and everything. My name is Vicki Thorn. I am the founders of Project Rachel. I am the director of the National Office of Post-Abortion Reconciliation and Healing in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. And I guess I'm one of the pioneers in terms of post-abortion healing. Project Rachel started 31 years ago. It's pretty much spread across the U.S. now. That it's a Catholic outreach, but it is a network of caregivers, and it's open to anyone who wants to come. It's not, you don't have to have a statement of creed or anything to get help. When I started it, it came about because a friend of mine had an abortion when I was in high school, before it was legal, and that awareness of the woundedness that was there in my friend. As God unfolded my own life, I was working for the diocese, and I was supposed to be working just on legislative issues. That was what I was hired to do. And I became the Respect Life Director and saw the bishops had called for a ministry like this, and I set out to do it. It took me 7 years to do it. There were no experts in anything. In hindsight, however, it is true that in Japan, since the 1950s, they did have mourning ceremonies for people who had aborted their children. The belief is that if an abortion happens, that spirit can't be reincarnated. And their description is it turns ugly and creates mischief in the family. It's the same things we see in this culture and in other cultures. The bottom line is that with a woman who's had an abortion, this is a mother who's lost her child in a traumatic and unnatural fashion. And that's universal, all right? Taiwan also has special programs. They have a similar belief. They're called baby spirit programs. So it's a universal phenomenon in terms of aftermath. Now, just scientifically for a minute, we need to know that mothers carry cells from every child they ever conceive the rest of their lives. They're everywhere in her body. It's impossible for her to forget, all right? Because the myth is that, the aftermath of abortion is caused by the pro-life movement and Christians, when we people feel guilty. The reality is this is a biological knowledge, all right? Also, we carry cells of our mothers, and our mothers pass the cells of every child that has occupied her womb, full-term or short-term, to the rest of the siblings, all right? It's called microchimerism. And so that awareness of the connection across families, this is why people will tell you, I always thought I should have a big brother or a big sister. They've got biological knowledge. And if we have a miscarriage or an abortion, we actually carry more cells from that child than we carry from children we give birth to. Don't know what that's about, but it's there, right? We also have to know that it isn't only the woman who's impacted, it's men. We've done 2 conferences on men and abortion over the years. And there's a myth that men are forcers or that men don't care. And I have to confront that myth because that certainly wasn't what we saw in terms of the men who came. Many of them would have put their life in front of a car if they had to, but they didn't get any say. They tried. And then there are guys who are told, sit down, shut up, it's not your body. But again, a bit of science that I want to add is that men are biologically changed by pregnancy. It begins at 4 weeks after conception. Before she even knows she's pregnant for sure, her scent changes. And men recognize that, all right? They're recorded.
What changes?
Scent, something called pheromones. These are not perceived by the perfume nerve, but rather by a separate nerve that's right behind the forehead here. And they're perceived by 2 little pits in the middle of your nose. And it communicates relationship information, all right? So for instance, women who are not chemically contracepting will pick a male, first attraction, who's a good biological partner for her. If she's contracepting, it changes her preference, and she will now pick a male whose immune system is too much like hers. When she goes off the pill, if they are married, the whole sexual piece will simply fall apart. He smells bad to her, all right?
But it's not something that you can smell, I mean.
No, not consciously.
Not consciously.
Not consciously. But it's in part what we do when we smell babies, all right? That, they smell nice, but we also are looking for family. And we would recognize members of our family that we haven't ever met. We'd be attracted to them. There'd be recognition, okay? So that's a whole nother talk. But anyway, but the awareness of fathers. So by 4 weeks, his cortisol goes up, which is not to be stressed, but rather to protect. 60 to 90% of men who are with their partners will have symptoms of pregnancy. primitive cultures know this, our culture doesn't know it. It's called kuvad. 20% are really sick. They go to the doctor, they say, I'm really sick. I'm nauseous, I'm vomiting, I headaches, backaches, toothaches, I don't feel well, I'm not sleeping well, I have food cravings. And a little later in pregnancy would report about 6 pounds of weight gain. But anyway, then right before the baby comes, his hormones just go crazy. So his testosterone drops radically, his estrogen goes up, making him kinder, more protective. He gets more cortisol, again, protection. He gets vasopressin, which is a distinctly male bonding hormone. Mother Nature sits, stay, don't abandon right now, all right? And he gets prolactin, which is a nursing hormone, and he's got it for at least 6 weeks. Makes him extra nice and kind and tender. And with every subsequent child, he gets more prolactin. It's just one of those interesting pieces. Who's counting? Somebody's counting, all right? But that fact that men are impacted by this also, and as we do pro-life work, we need to talk about men being healed, because they go into the culture and change things in radical ways. Women do something different in terms of they're never pro-abortion again, but they might not be in a place where they could be public. Okay, so they're working in our crisis pregnancy centers. They're doing all kinds of things behind the scenes. Okay. But the importance of healing, because we have millions of women, billions in the world, who have had abortions. If we do not assist them in healing, they will continue to support abortion. You know, the people who are the most angry that we run into almost all have an abortion story. It might not be their abortion, but my mother had an abortion, my sister did, they're not healed, so I have to protect their right to this. And a couple of the books that are out there, just fairly recently written by young pro-abortion folks, talk about their mother's abortions and how their mothers died before they got a chance to talk to them about it. They found out after the fact. And then one found out that grandma also had an abortion in Russia, okay? So that need to not judge, okay? And in terms of my work, I make a distinction between people who are pro-choice and those who are actively pro-abortion. The pro-choice people are the people who say, well, I could never have an abortion, but, okay? Those, again, these people all have a history. And the reason that the abortion issue is so contentious, so angry, is it's not a moral and philosophical debate. Everybody's got a story. And they're operating out of their pain. And that's why this is so critical in terms of any work that we do in terms of family, pro-family issues. Couples who've had abortions, 70% of them fall apart, okay? 30% might survive in what's called an atonement marriage. But the problem with that is if we don't forgive each other, if we don't heal it, it's going to interfere with our intimacy. We don't trust each other anymore. We don't talk, okay? You know, it's so prevailing. It changes how people parent. A mother who's unhealed after an abortion will have a difficult labor and delivery because the cortisol is up, the anxiety is there. And she oftentimes is very overly protective of her child, but emotionally distant. You'll see women who hold their babies in a funny fashion away from them, like we hold an older baby out there. Or way back here, it's an awkward hold. If you see it, you say, that's funny, okay? It's not the football hold of nursing, it's just awkward. It's hard for her to bond, and you run into some abuse issues sometimes because she acts out the baby she aborted was perfect, and the one she got's the regular one. And if she's emotionally fragile, she may act out, okay? Those pieces, the fathers who've lost their children are very anxious during pregnancy because they're afraid that this baby's gonna die. And when the child comes, they sometimes push the woman away and become like the sole parent. And they're overly protective. They won't let these kids do anything. And true story, one father, the baby sneezed, he rushed to the emergency room and said, this child has pneumonia. And the people at the nurse took the baby in and examined it and came out and said, sir, the baby has fuzz in its nose. It's not pneumonia. But this overreaction. Fathers are supposed to be the ones who teach their children how to do risky play. One of the biggest predictors of healthy, well-adjusted 20-somethings are fathers who did the horsey back ride and the let's go ride our bikes down the big hill, and mom's going, let me put 911 in the phone quick before you go. But they can't do that because they are so hyper alert and so concerned about their child. You know, the other children in the family may well know that there's an abortion. Sometimes they've been told, sometimes there's this intuitive awareness. I always thought I should have a brother, I always thought I should have a sister. It is something that just permeates all of our society and around the world. And we have to understand that in other cultures, there are many, many more abortions per woman than there are in this culture. You know, Russia, the average is 9. In Romania, when I was there, the doctors were talking to me. 2 separate doctors asked me the same question. And the question was, they had had women tell them that they had had 70 abortions. Did I think that was possible? The first one I said, I don't know. Maybe she's telling you I've had so many at 70 times 7 that you wouldn't believe it. But then the other doctor told me the same thing. And I knew the other doctor better from some other things that I had done. But the numbers alone are big, okay? So even as we do our work, to know that in other countries and cultures is a huge issue. You know, in China, obviously, because of the one-child policy, but keep in mind that it's only the Han Chinese that have that particular stipulation. The minorities do not, okay? In India, many times that's a mother-in-law who doesn't want a girl child because sons have more value. That's another layer of complication, okay, in terms of healing. In Africa, one of the issues is that women know how to do this with herbs. Well, that's different because I did it. I got the herbs, I took the herbs, I had this abortion. It's similar in this country to the abortion pill, okay? The medical abortion of a surgical procedure in some respects is initially a little easier to deal with because it was over there and I don't have to go over there, okay? Somebody did it to me. Now, eventually this all gets resolved, but just the awareness that there are different facets in terms of how people play this out, okay? Always, again, to include in our pro-life message that there's healing. For women, for men, we have a website, menandabortion.info, that came out of the conferences we've done on men's healing after abortion. I have a couple books with me that I'll put out, you can take a look at. One is is a healing book, a generic healing book on abortion. Christian but gentle, okay, because sometimes fathers have a real problem with God. Why didn't he stop this? And that's part of his processing. Then there's another one called Swallowed by a Snake, written by a man who is an expert in men's healing. And it's very helpful because women and men don't grieve the same way. And we need to understand that men's grief is different in terms of how we process it, how we're available to him. Recognizing that the man who would have stopped this abortion, if he could have, is likely to be rage-filled, he's likely to be grieving, he's likely to stalk his partner, and to do dangerous things, risk-take to the point of death. And many of those men end up with chemical addictions, with pornography addictions. They swear they'll never touch a woman again. If you encounter the man who would have done everything to stop this, you have to help him physically get rid of his rage. He's potentially dangerous to her, all right? There are murder-suicides in this country and nobody knows what the cause is. But if the family knows, there was one in Milwaukee a few years ago, front page story, the morning I was giving a talk on murder-suicide, and there'd been an abortion and he lost it, okay? So those pieces that are there, and men don't know where to go for help because they're told it's not your business, it's not your body, so why are you feeling bad, okay? So he doesn't know who to turn to. So again, the importance of us always talking about both men and women needing healing as the process goes on, okay? So, whatever our venue, it's important that we recognize the walking wounded, that we always talk about healing, and recognize that the rage that's there is not generic rage. It's related to something, okay? And sometimes, depending on what you're doing, somebody's raging at you. A way to sort of, kind of change the discussion is to say to them, would you mind telling me why you feel so strongly? I'd really like to understand. And then just be quiet and just let them talk. And sometimes it'll be sort of disconnected, sometimes it'll be very coherent. But what it does is relieve the toxicity here. They've been carrying this pain around all this. And sometimes you leave, you really don't know what the issue was, but that's okay. Because you shifted the paradigm. We're supposed to be the enemy. We're supposed to be arguing with them. sometimes arguing does no good, all right? It just makes everybody defensive. By asking the question, you've shifted this. Oh, that person asked me. Huh, okay. And to know, and you can't always do this, but sometimes you can, is when they're done, to put a hand on an arm, on a shoulder, say thank you for sharing. It really helped me to understand. Why do I say that? Because 20 minutes of touch, 20 seconds of touch unleashes the chemistry of connection and lowers their stressors. And now they're confused, okay? That was supposed to be the enemy. How come I'm feeling pretty good about it right now? But also in hearing the story, we do learn things, okay? We do learn why they feel so passionately. And so those are important pieces for us just in terms of how we reach out. You know, to know that many of the people who work at clinics have their own abortion story. You know, you've got Bernie Nathanson who helped to change the law to make abortion legal, 60,000 abortions on his own children, and then had a conversion experience because Cardinal O'Connor befriended him. Okay, just listen to him, all right? And he became one of the biggest pro-life advocates. You know, there's many out there now. Abby Johnson, there's a bunch of people, but they all got loved into the movement by somebody who took time to listen. Okay, and to recognize that many of the women who have abortions have holes in their soul. The abortion is almost a symptom of stuff that's gone on in the past, whether it's divorce, whether it's abuse, whether they were the oops kids in the family, you know, whether their parents were abortion survivors themselves. Many, many, many wounds in the abortion is the thing we see. And they look incredibly competent, but in fact, they didn't believe they had the wherewithal to raise a child, because that's really the bottom line there. And many times also for us is our message, if we can speak to people, our message needs to be that God never made a mistake. God nods whenever a child is conceived, because that's still the myth. This one's a mistake, you know, because of rape, because of incest, because of whatever. The reality is that if those women are given compassionate care, that child becomes one of the things that helps them to heal. They may not raise the child, they may place it for adoption, but it changes the meaning of this awful thing that happened. Out of that awful thing came life. So, does anybody have any questions quickly?
What is Rachel?
Project Rachel is the Catholic Church's post-abortion healing ministry. It is a network of caregivers. It comes from the Old Testament, from Jeremiah 31:15-17, where Rachel is mourning for her children more and more. And the Lord says, cease your cries, they've been heard, there's hope for your future. And the hope was the message of the ministry.
Jeremiah what?
31:15-17.
Okay, let me introduce myself. I'm Vladimir Mishchenko. I am from Moscow, from Russia. I took part in a couple of previous World Law Congresses in Madrid and in Sydney. And I'm happy to see all of you here at the World Congress of Families, organized by our old partners. Today I'd like to speak frankly about the way not indifferent people try to secure family values and native Christian family. If you have any question, do not hesitate to ask me in the end of my presentation. I'm going to speak today about our activity on the example of Sanctity of Motherhood, Russian national program of St. Andrew Foundation. St. Andrew Foundation, I'm vice president of this foundation, is one of the oldest Russian social organization. It was founded in 1993, and the main program of this foundation is Sanctity of Motherhood. Well, Russia is one of the mainstays of traditional Christian families, and in the slide you can see words of John Chrysostom, Archbishop of Constantinople. State consists of cities and villages. Cities and villages consist of families. If you shut the families, the state will stagger. I'm pleased to introduce Natalia Yakunina, the founder and the head of program Sanctity of Motherhood. She's a member of President's Council on Families. Our aim is large, strong families with happy children. Our organization signed agreements in Russia with governors of 24 regions of Russia. Our activity includes many aspects, starting from individual help to pregnant women in crisis situation, till defining state concept of family policy. Program Sanctity of Motherhood started from the project You Are Not Alone. It was in Krasnoyarsk in Siberia, approximately 10 years ago. This project aims to help pregnant women in crisis situation to reject abortions and save life. Thanks to the project You Are Not Alone, approximately 11,000 children were born in Russia. Mechanism of project realization is based on psychologist consultation of pregnant women who came to state health centers to do abortion. More than 400 psychologists were educated in our centers in Russia to prevent abortions. Another branch of our activity is support of crisis pregnancy centers in Russia. Here, Father Maxim Obukhov, he is a famous man, famous father, and he is one of the founders of this activity in Russia. So we also initiated establishment of association of crisis pregnancy centers. These centers provide legal, psychological and social support to women with children. This is an example of our social outdoors. In the slide you can see results of this interim results of this project. More than 350 psychologists were trained and extension courses. In course of this project, we issued manuals for practicing psychologists. We established Association of Psychologists in Russia. Here you can see examples of interim results of this project in different cities of Russia: Krasnoyarsk, Kurgan, Novosibirsk, and others. Every day, hard work of such psychologists results in 11,000 lives, which equals to population of a small town. We help children with health difficulties to cope with their illnesses. Sanctity of Motherhood is well known in different cities and towns of Russia, because a lot of not indifferent people take part in voluntary activities in course of our projects. Our program aims to help young generation to grow up and become responsible. We draw our attention to the volunteers movement. In this sphere, we want to use American experience. As I told, our program aims to help young generation to grow up and become responsible. That is why we organized School of Social Activities, which helps youngsters to become professionals. It's different cities where we organized this school. We work not only with motherhood, but also support fathers in Russia. Last year, we organized a campaign in which fathers of large families took part. They drove bikes from far east of Russia to Moscow. They met young people in hundreds of cities and discussed family values. It was from July to September. This slide is devoted to International Forum, Large Family and Future of Humanity. If you want, you can take this material for this International Forum. So this International Forum, Large Family and Future of Humanity, which took place in Kremlin Palace in Moscow last year, and more than 1,500 members from 45 countries and 65 regions of Russia took part in it. The International Forum was supported by Russian state authorities. This International Forum aimed at support of natural family as basic institution of civilized society. As a result of 3 days forum, a resolution of Large Family and Future Humanity was adopted. Life defense and support of natural families is our aim, which needs systematic and professional approach. Activity of Sanctity of Motherhood is changing culture of Russian society in terms of strengthening of traditional family values and natural family. I hope that our meeting is the next step to our joint efforts. Thank you for your attention. It's a brochure in English about our program and about our foundation. If you want to.
I have a question. So do people just volunteer to be part of your organization or churches, or how can somebody who lives in Russia become part of helping with the sanctity of motherhood?
So, thank you for a question. It's several spheres of cooperation, coordination with people. So the main one is cooperation with state authorities in regions of Russia, because it's the most important thing. We signed agreements with governors of Russian regions. Now it's 24 agreements, and it's approximately a third part of Russia. It's officially agreement, and so we can ask authorities, we can coordinate, cooperate with authorities. It's very important. So the second way, we use the youngsters in institutes, from universities, from institutes. So it's very important part of people, because they are in fertile age. So they're at the beginning of their life, family way. And as I told, the activity is very important, and it become responsible youngsters. Excuse me, my English, but you understand.
You're doing it.
So I think that's all. And we have this association of psychologists. It's a lot of psychologists from different regions of Russia, and every year we organized approximately 3 or 4 times per year special courses for psychologists.
Specifically for the sanctity of
Yes,
the family.
only for this in this sphere.
I know that President Medvedev and his wife were very pro-life. Is the current administration continuing that?
Yes, beginning from the 2007, our state authorities changed their policy in this sphere. And the state pro-family policy, concept of state pro-family policy was adopted last year in Russia. And our organization took part in this work. Today we have economical crisis. It's very difficult situation, but anyway, we feel optimistically, and I hope that first of all we have to change our mind of people in this sphere, and economical reasons. It's the second one. That's all.
I have the same question.
So we have in our, according to our pro-family concept pro-family policy, maternal fund. So for every second child, it was 450,000 rubles, approximately. Now it's approximately $7,000 for every second child. You can use this money for house, for education. So, that's all.
What if there was a third child?
Only for the second
Only for
child.
the second
Only
child,
for the
okay.
second, yes.
Okay.
It's only help to accelerate this process. It's not to change, but accelerate. And now we had a good data in the quantity of population. Now we have 146 million people. But now this situation, unfortunately, changed in this year. So that's all. Thank you very much.
If you want to see the books, I only brought a few, but especially the Men in Abortion, A Path to Healing by C.T. Coyle. She is a woman. But it's a forgiveness model that can be used by a clergyman or a psychologist or somebody who is working with the father. The Knights of Columbus do have a small booklet that sells for $1, written by her also. If you're working in a Catholic setting, it would be a possibility. This is The Swallow by the Snake, the gift of the masculine side of healing. It's very valuable because we, again, don't tend to think about men dealing with this differently. And Tom Golden is one of the few men I know who's written about it, okay? And this, I apologize, this is an old book, but it's been reissued, but somebody picked up my new one, so. No one told me I could cry. This is designed for young women who are starting healing after abortion, but the new one also recognizes that older women who are starting find this very helpful also. Life Cycle Books here in the United States sells it in Canada. And I'll just put them out here if you want to just take a quick look at them or whatever. And anything I can do to be of service in terms of information for you. Project Rachel is a network of caregivers, okay? So there's clergy, mental health people, medical people, spiritual directors, whoever. And wherever this woman wants to start, she can. And then she can move within the network. So again, sometimes the abortion is a symptom and there's other issues that need to be addressed. So it's important that we have the kind of people who can take on whatever those issues are, whether they're chemical addictions or whatever. So again, anything I can do, I have some cards with me, I'll put those out if you want to take one. And anything again I can do to be of service, please let me know.
Okay, the same situation also if you want.